I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, October the 7th, brought to you in part by Zach Tran. It's the fall of the year, guys, and a lot of you are trying to wean calves, or you're getting new arrivals of calves that are unweaned. Zach Tran is an antibiotic by Boehringer Ingelheim that's approved for the treatment and control of bovine respiratory disease. You might need some. Remember to observe your 35-day withdrawal period after treatment. For more information, go to zachtran.com or visit with your BI representative. Crop touring. We usually talk about crop touring early in the season, in the growing season, when they're kind of looking and seeing what the stand's like and everything, on your corn especially, but also on your beans. But crop touring also happens during the early part of harvest, and going around and talking to farmers and seeing kind of what their yields are looking like. They've all got the computerized monitors on their combines, and they can see that. I did a lot of crop touring when I lived in northwest Missouri for many years there, but our crop touring usually included a cooler and some Hank Williams Jr. But nonetheless, there's a lot of crop touring that's going on during the early part of the growing season and during the early part of harvest. But I tell you what, we've got a big crop production report coming out by USDA on Friday, and the powers that be, the prognosticators, those are the traders, the guys in Chicago, are doing a lot of guessing, and they're getting nervous about it and things like that, and they're thinking that our yields are going to be down, which I haven't seen any reports for that yet, and they're starting to trade the board that way. So we saw our grains, corn and beans, go up big on Tuesday, and it affected your feeder cattle market. Of course, anything affects your feeder cattle market, especially on the downside, but took some stiff losses in your feeder cattle futures on Tuesday, and it was pretty tough there. But keep your eye on that crop production report on Friday. We'll kind of see how it goes, but they're guessing around a little bit. The dollar is some cheaper. And we don't really know how everything is going to work out, but the progress of the harvest is coming right along. So it can't be due to that at all, because we are moving right through harvest this year. As of Monday, the report come out, the crop progress report come out, that corn is already a quarter done with harvest. 25%. That compares to only 14% the same time a year ago. On your soybeans, 38% completed compared to 12% a year ago. I mean, it's dry around, and those of us looking for forage, people that are in the cattle business and would really love to have a place to turn some cattle out. People are already feeding their cows, and it's really tough out there because it's so dry. But your grain farmers are loving it, because right here during harvest, they really don't need any moisture, and they don't need anything slowing them down, and they are flat moving through these crops and harvesting them in a hurry. And it's not going to take very long before we're completely done here. But tell you what, these grain traders being nervous with things, had corn on Tuesday up 5.5 cents for the new crop at $3.85. All summer we went through there, it was about $3.10, and it's not very often that we see the grains really get higher right during harvest, but this is one of those times, and whenever that does happen, it does not bode well for your feeder cattle markets. But beans up 22.5 cents on Tuesday at $10.44 on the close per bushel, and those are significant gains, especially right during harvest here. But let's look at the board on our cattle markets. Our live cattle futures for October up 37 cents at 109.20. Now our last established market was 107. We're starting to get it well into October here, and our live cattle futures are at 109.20, and they were up a little bit. Like I said on Tuesday, this was despite some tenders for delivery, just a handful, but some of your guys up in the northern plains, extreme northern plains up there, tendered several loads there for delivery at the Worthing livestock market there, Sioux Falls Regional Livestock Market. Now they have imposed a $1.50 per hunter discount to take your cattle to Worthing there, and it's kind of unfair for those guys up in that part of the country. Of course, a lot of times those guys are selling a little bit off the market, but that's one reason that it behooves them to tender cattle for delivery. You know, they've got some short positions in there. They'll sell those cattle for 109 or better. That they got no problem with that, especially whenever the market's 107. They have a hard time achieving that. But December live cattle up 20 cents at 111.95. You're going out from there on your live cattle down 50 cents to up 12, so just a little bit uneven, but not a lot of volatility on the out fronts. Feeder cattle for October down $1.92, and we talked about the reasons why, at 138.12, falling well below what your index levels are for an 800-pound steer. November feeders down $2.40. Wow, at 137.52. You go on out from there, and they were all down a buck to down $1.97 on your out front feeder cattle futures, which is really tough. And I tell you what, right here while we're trying to move so many of these calves that we're selling. Your fat cattle trade, of course, we had good movement last week. We talked about that on our last visit, but your guys are digging in, and I tell you what, they're getting some leverage back. For the last several weeks, we haven't seen anybody selling anything on a Monday or Tuesday, and hardly anything on Wednesday. And they're learning to get some grit back in, and they're finding out that these packers are needing cattle. They're finding out that we are getting into a spot where we don't have a big supply of market-ready cattle. A lot of that was showed to us by our placement figures way back in the spring, right after the worst of the COVID, because cattle just weren't selling. You know, there was too much uncertainty in the market. We weren't selling any cattle, hence they weren't placing many cattle, and we wondered if we were going to see that. Yes, we are seeing that we're getting into a spot where we don't have a whole lot of market-ready cattle. Packers are really wanting to get these cattle. They've tipped their hand already. We've gained $6 the last 3 weeks, and we're going to gain another buck or two this week. That is, if the board doesn't kill us, and that showed some strength on Tuesday with your live cattle futures higher, not a lot higher, but some higher, when your feeder cattle futures were down so hard from pressure with the grains. But I didn't hardly see anything at all, nothing to speak of hardly. Iowa had a couple hundred head of confirmed sales at the 107, but it's going to be higher this week. We didn't see any confirmed sales at all from Nebraska, from Kansas, or Texas, or anywhere else. So the guys are holding tough. They got their boot heels dug in, and they're gaining some market position right now, and more power to them. I'm glad that they're doing that. You know, if you read Cassie Fish's daily publication called The Beef Read, and you can look it up that way, and it's published by Consolidated Beef Producers down in Canyon, Texas, there, my hometown. She is really, really good, and I read her most days, and then I want to give her a plug because in the latest one that I read, she made a point of it with some graphs and some kind of analysis there that we're getting to the point of the year where grading normally starts to improve. I'm talking about the percentage of cattle that grade choice or better in the southern plains. We're getting to the part of the year where it normally starts to improve as we're starting to get to some cattle that were put on feed as yearlings, and the yearlings just grade so much better. They got more maturity, and they always grade better than a calf fed. But we're getting to the part of the year where normally that starts to improve. But right now we're getting to the point this year where the grading is falling off from the record levels that we saw following the worst of the COVID. When we saw cattle that were backed up because they weren't able to get them processed and things like that, and we had these weights getting really, really heavy, and we're still struggling with our heavier weights, but we're starting to see our grading fall off a little bit. Well, that tells us that indeed we are getting to a spot where we're not backed up anymore. And on our last week's report, the actual information from slaughter that says what our dressed carcass weights were, we saw them kind of level out. And in fact, they were a pound lighter, which is not a lot, but with no holidays or anything to really jack that up, it's a clear indication that we've kind of leveled off. And it'll be interesting to see later this week when we get that actual slaughter information whether or not we see your carcass weights back off a little bit more. And now that they're really digging in and cranking up the chain speeds a little bit, because they've been able, and I say the packers have been able to maintain and actually improve their wholesale beef prices right during a time that normally they're falling. And so they were able to kind of hold those things together, and now they're getting to the part of the year here later in the fall that they're going to see those improve, and they've got pretty good margins coming forth. And so they're going to be wanting to step up the slaughter even more. They're going to be digging harder into these cattle. And if we've kind of reached a point where our weights are starting to come down and we're catching up on these backed up cattle, and we're going to have kind of a hole here in market ready cattle, this is a big opportunity for these cattle sellers to keep digging in, keep gaining market position, and you know, don't let them buffalo you. They need the cattle. Don't just ask for a buck or two more. Why not ask for $3 more or $5 more? You know, that's the only way you're going to gain market position. And we were falling, you know, way far behind there, barely clinging to $1 there, and now we're starting to gain a little ground. Let's gain some more and get all we can get during this opportunity here, because we got big numbers of cattle on feed, but there's not that many that are ready right now. So we need to gain as much market position as we can, hold things up here, which will lend support to your feeder markets and help us sell all these calves that we got to work through with these fall calf sales. But box beef cutout values, choice on Tuesday afternoon down 74 cents, but still at $216.24, and that's awful good. Your selects down $1.17 at $206.84. Let's talk about your feeder cattle markets and what else is going on. I tell you what, I'm recording here from Twin Falls, Idaho, and I did a speaking engagement for the Billington's Family Market here in Twin Falls. Twin Falls Livestock Commission. They had a nice crowd there. Enjoyed meeting the whole gang right there, and had a good meal. And it was really, they had some good sponsors there that helped put that on for the customer appreciation dinner. They've got a nice sale with a lot of weaned calves coming up on Wednesday. So if you need some of those, get an order into Twin Falls Livestock Commission on Wednesday, and they're going to have a really nice sale there. But really enjoyed my time out here in Idaho. Never been out in this part of the country before, but a lot of card-carrying feeder flash gang members out in this part of the country, and really enjoyed meeting a lot of those people that like to watch this report every morning. But look at your feeder markets, your real-time index on DB auction late in the day on Tuesday at 140.96. That was down $1.05. And it's not the few yearling feeders that we have out there that are selling cheaper. It's some of these bigger calves that they're marketing, these guys that pushed them a little bit, and they're getting into the 7 weight category. And you know, our index is figured on 7 to 899 pound steers, you know, averaging right around 800 pounds. But we're sneaking more and more of those calves in there, and the calves are pulling it down. And I'll kind of give you guys some evidence of that as I give you several quotes from all around the country, feeder cattle quotes, because that's my favorite thing to do. How about let's look at some of your big sales. West Plains, Missouri, Ozarks Regional Stockyard, 3,100 head on Tuesday. Your yearling steers, what few of them they had, but they had a few big strings, sold steady to firm. That's what you always see. Your feeder calves, your bigger calves that you know, of course, there's not any place to turn cattle out for the most part, but your bigger calves that got to go right on to feed, they were $2 to $4 lower. Now your lighter weight steer calves were steady. Most of your heifer calves were $2 to $4 lower. But that's just kind of the way it is. That's very indicative of this time of year, and very indicative of what's going on. How about some other quotes around? Denny Rezac Livestock Commission, St. Mary's, Kansas, had a good run, nearly 2,000 head there. And a nice run there, but did look at some of the comparisons to the weighted average from last week's sale, and your steer weights up there, your feeder steer weights, $4 to $5 lower compared to the weighted average from the previous week. But like I said, that's likely because of some of your bigger calves sneaking in there. But I tell you what, on hard yearlings, no cheaper at all, because I did see this quote out of Rezac. 56 head, 875 pound yearling feeder steers, $145. That's not any cheaper. How about a calf quote? Philip the Giant under new ownership, but still Philip the Giant up there, and they're starting to get into some of their big runs, and they can sell those fancy, and they don't have better cattle anywhere in the world up there in South Dakota, guys, and they're selling these calves, and they are the nuts. Philip Livestock sale there, and Philip Livestock Auction sold 101 head, 500-pound steers, $174.75. That's a good clip there, and that's a one good square load of fancy steers. How about a market there in central Missouri? Lolly Brothers Livestock Market, long-time broadcast customer of DV Auction, of course, with their horse sales, with their exotic sales, and now they're starting to turn or leave the broadcast equipment on for their cattle sales. They're getting into some of these specials, but I tell you what, Lolly Brothers on Tuesday sold 65 head, 850-pound steers, $147.75. That's a pretty good clip. How about Riverton Livestock Auction, a winter livestock barn up there in Wyoming? How about 203 head, 2 loads of these 443-pound fancy steers bring $186.75. But about the best market that I saw anywhere around on Tuesday was one that we don't talk about a lot, but man, they had a heck of a sale on Tuesday. Was Glacial Lakes Livestock, Watertown, South Dakota. And look at these quotes that I pulled out of here on these load lots and bigger. They had 3 loads, 750 to 775 pound heifers. They'd be good. 144 to 144.85. That is higher than your index by about $4 or $5 on some heifers that are almost 800 pounds, which is what your index is based on. So basically you're selling feeder heifers at steer prices right there. Look at some of these other ones on there. 51 head, 738 pound steers in Glacial Lakes, $152.35. 52 head, 912 pound steers bring $142.50. How about 7 head that weighed nearly a grand, 70 head weighed nearly a grand, 987 pounds at $135.75, and 100 head of 1,085 pound big giant feeder steers, nearly 1,100 pounds, guys, at $132.50 on a $107 fat cattle market. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.